Are you going to post it in the? Okay, all right. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. We'll start off with a small ayah of the Quran. In Surah Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. So thank you for coming to attend day 2 of our 2-day workshop. A lot of people were attending online yesterday, and so I didn't realize that there were so many people watching online. And so we got a lot of good feedback about the content, especially the demo that we had of the kafan was very helpful for people. So inshallah today, there are not many people here, but I'm guessing more people are online. A couple of people have already asked for the link to the YouTube, so I'm just going to share that right now. And then we can get started, inshallah. Give me 1 second here. There's some people that are not on the group. Okay, there we go. Let's paste it. All right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So today's session is going to be broken into 2 parts. We have the first part, which is a little bit of an important subject, and this is my wife will be giving that presentation, because even I don't know much of this stuff, which is the medical decision making. And then the second part, I'll be talking about some updates for the funeral committee in general. So what slide are we on? Beautiful. Okay. So do you want to start off?
Yes.
Okay, next slide, please.
Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, thank you all so much for being here. So I wanted to start first by saying, sharing, and I ask you to join me, sharing the same opening prayer that I started with yesterday. So, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, we ask God to bless us with sincerity in our intention and speech today, and to forgive our mistakes and errors, and to open all our hearts to learning in an effort to be closer to Him, and to ease our journey ahead on the straight path, inshallah, ameen. So, as Abbas mentioned, as we try to figure out the topics for these workshops, we're looking at like this framework of guidance, really. So we want to talk about conversations and have topics on before death, at the time of death, and then after death. So a lot of the topics that we'll try and inshallah bring up will fall into one of these buckets. So we're doing things a little bit backwards, because our last and our first funeral workshop, if you all remember, we talked more about at the time of death. Right? If you remember, Abbas had put up a little diagram to show what happens if someone dies in the hospital, what happens if someone dies under hospice care, what happens if someone dies at home. And so, he also showed what different entities that we have to work with. Who do we have to collaborate with? And it's quite the intricate, the intricate design that we kind of have to follow before we can meet and fulfill all the funeral rites. So we talked about at the time of death. And then yesterday, most of our focus was after death. So we really wanted to bring to you all an idea of just what happens when someone dies, like the ghusl and the kafan and the dafn part. I remember just a couple of months back, we did a ghusl for an Iranian lady. And the family was, they were not very frequent mosque goers, and they'd been a bit removed from religion as well. So the family was there partaking in the ghusl and kafan. And at one point, the daughter just burst out, and she said, "This is such a beautiful process." And she said to me that I had been so fearful. In my mind, the idea was that it was going to be such a difficult process, such a fearful process. I never realized what a beautiful process this was. And for her to be able to partake in the ghusl and to be able to see the beautiful send-off we were giving to her mother was so healing in itself. So yesterday we then touched on these things. That's the after death. But the before death part, yes, before death, it could be just hours or days before the actual death. But we are realizing that a lot of people that we work with, that we're trying to plan like the funeral process with, are struggling a lot with so many complexities that come with medical decision making. And they've been through hospitalization, back and forth from the ER, having different opinions on medical decision making, and there's a lot of struggle and challenge during that time. So inshallah, one of the things that we would like to also focus on is that the before death part, the process where there are all of these difficult medical decision making processes, and how we can maybe help clarify some of that and simplify some of that. So inshallah, today that will be one of our goals. So as we talked yesterday, death can happen for many reasons, right? So natural causes such as old age, illnesses, events such as an accident, natural disasters, war, violence. But chronic serious illness is another reason. And we talked about yesterday, and Abbas in his ayah also reminded us that the ultimate reason for death is that we are going to return back to God. But then there's all these things that kind of, they are circumstantial or excuses for death, and serious illness is one big one. So serious illnesses such as cancer, heart, lung conditions, kidney failure, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, these are all illnesses that one can live for a very long time. For example, Alzheimer's disease, it's possible to live with that disease for up to 20 years. It's not the average, but there is a possibility that one could. So these are illnesses that are chronic, and you live with them for a long time. But in general, because of advancement in technology and in medicine, we are living way longer than our ancestors. And so if you look at the numbers, just in 10 years, life global, and this is global life expectancy, increased from an average of 66 years in 2010 to 73 in 2020. So in only 10 years, we are living 6 years more. So we're doing well in living longer. So the quantity of life, we're doing well. But are we living well? The quality of life. We're living longer, but our bodies continue to disintegrate. Our bodies continue to be, to face illnesses. And so we really have to kind of consider this whole idea of how much this living longer is really promoting overall wellness. But even if we are living longer, death is guaranteed, right? We talked about that. That's, Abbas's opening ayah yesterday talked about how death will find us wherever, whenever it's our time. And one of the ways we do die is from a serious illness. So in order to understand healthcare in general, it's helpful to look at it in three different parts. So the way I like to kind of break it up is that there is simple illness, there is managing an illness, and then there is life-limiting illness. So the simple illness is the illness that you and I deal with every day. So for example, we fall sick, we go to the doctor's office, the doctor prescribes medication, we take medication, and then we're better, right? So the goal is cure. It could be that somebody may need a surgery. They go get that intervention, then they're better. They go back to normal. So that's a simple illness. And that's the majority of how we understand and interact with healthcare. The second aspect of healthcare is where you have to manage an illness. So this is where you have an illness, but maybe there's no cure. And so what you're doing is that you're taking medication that helps you with the symptoms of that illness, or it's slowing down the process of that illness, and you're able to function pretty well. But there's no cure. You're not completely cured from that. So a really good example is diabetes, right? If you have diabetes, you can live with that diabetes and function really well, but there's no really cure for it. So if you do your diet well, if you do your exercise, if you take your insulin shots when you're supposed to, and if you're managing and maintaining your blood sugar levels, then you could pretty much manage that illness in a way where you're functioning well. But then if that illness now advances So now say we talk about Alzheimer's disease, for example, or heart condition, and you've had that for many years. But now that illness has advanced to a stage where now it's to that last stage of that illness. It's advanced, and possibly it is at that stage where life expectancy may be limited, meaning that were this disease to progress naturally, it's possible you could die from that within a certain period of time. So that phase, that third phase, where now that illness has advanced, that's where medical decision-making can become very complicated. And again, the same reason, technology. So technology is a double-edged sword. You know, there is a lot of advantages that we have from advancing technology, but technology also complicates matters. We have way more choices now than we did 100 years ago. And even though as human beings we think that we love choices and we want choices, it can really complicate matters. It can create a lot of chaos and confusion in our minds. So sometimes dealing with that decision making that comes from all of these options can be the harder part of the illness. So, inshallah, we hope to have more conversations around medical decision making, but today we wanted to start with advanced directives. So, advanced directives, we're fine there. If you can go back, yeah. So, what are advanced directives? So, basically, they are legal medical forms that allow you to make medical wishes and medical desires known for a time when you're not able to share that yourself. So I know that's many different parts to it. Basically, it's a form that allows you to make some decisions today, to sit down and think about some decisions today, but that form will not go into effect, meaning that you continue to make your own decisions. But that form comes into effect when you're not able to make decisions for yourself. So let me give you a couple of examples. Say I need to go into surgery. Now, when I'm in surgery, I'm not going to be able to express my wishes. I'm not going to be able to speak my wishes. So I may draw up this medical power of attorney paperwork, which is part of an advanced directive, that says that while I'm in surgery, if somebody has to make a decision for me, I want this person to make that decision. So before surgery, I am making the decisions. The doctor is going to ask me what I want, what my thoughts are. But the moment I go under anesthesia and I'm not able to speak, if something were to go wrong in the middle of surgery or some decision had to be made, then they can't ask me, right? Because I'm under anesthesia. I'm not able to communicate. But I've already on paper made my choice that if I can't make a decision for myself, I want this person to make a decision. So for example, I have an advanced directive where I have named Abbas as my primary agent. And then I have two other people in case Abbas is not able or unwilling to make a decision, then it goes down to those two other people. And I have my two children who are over 18 as the two other people, right? So advanced directives are exactly that. If you can go to the next slide, please. So specifically, the medical power of attorney is the document that I'd like to talk about today. So as I explained, this is a document, it's a very simple document, but it allows us to choose that person that we want to speak on our behalf if we are unable to do so. And so
is this mandatory?
No, it is not mandatory, but it is highly recommended. And the reason it's highly recommended is that at that point when you're not able to make a choice, someone is going to have to make a decision for you. So the law allows you to choose that person who you would want. So if I am not able to make a decision for myself, I want Abbas to be able to make the decision for me. Why? Because I trust him the most. And he understands my medical history, and he understands what I would want or not want. And it could be a whole host of decision-making questions. some that may be relevant to a certain situation, some that may be relevant in other situations, but it's an authority, it's like an all-encompassing authority that I have now given to this person to speak for me when I am unable to. But in a situation where now I'm out of surgery, I'm able to make my own decisions, that paperwork has no power. Now I continue to make my own decisions. So the question comes, well, is it really necessary to do this right now? You know, maybe when we have a very serious illness, or maybe when things are bad, we can think about it. But what's the one thing that could happen that is unexpected? You could be in an accident, right? What if you were in an accident and that rendered you unable to communicate? At that time, who makes decisions for you, right? So that document, if it's in place, at that time, whoever you have picked out to be the person that makes those choices for you will have the authority to make those choices.
But what is the default? I mean, if you don't have it, is it going to be?
Yes, so there is a default, yes. So the Texas law has a list of people. It's a list of people in a hierarchical order that would have decision-making power. So your spouse would be the first one, adult children would be the second one. But here the problem comes if, for example, the adult children are making a decision, and one adult child says this, and another adult child says, no, this. If there is a conflict, you can't move forward. Now we're stuck. And that can become very challenging, because think about you as a person, you're needing medical attention, you are in a state that may be critical, and now your family members are not able to come to a decision, right? And this happens more than I can tell you. Even in families where people they get along, they understand each other, somehow during a time that is highly emotional, where life and death may be kind of, something to consider, people can get very emotional about that time. And people can get very strong in their opinions about that time as well. And so at that time, when you have a conflict like that and it's not being resolved, they're not able to come to an agreement, somebody's medical health is kind of in a critical condition and waiting for people to make a decision. So for that reason, it's really important to put some thought into it, because you may have, say, 3 children. I had a patient one time, and he had 3 children. He had 2 sons, and his youngest was a daughter. And when I talked to him about this medical power of attorney paperwork, sometimes people will think, well, I should put my oldest son, because it's just, maybe sometimes culturally we do that, maybe it's just instinctually. But then when he thought about it, he realized that his youngest daughter was actually the person who knew more about what his wishes were. She was the one who was more on the ground, meaning that she was more accessible, she lived local, she had been the one who had maybe accompanied him to doctor's visits, so she was aware of what his medical history was. So it made sense for him to put his youngest daughter as the main agent. It's called a healthcare agent. And then he put his 2 sons as the alternate agent. So it's a document that needs to have some thought put into it, because at that time, that person who speaks for you should be the one that you trust the most, and should be the one who will be able to speak up and advocate for you.
Sister, when there's a conflict, is there legal? They can
Yes, but that takes a long time. Yeah, there are cases where things have had to go to court for years.
If it is a life-threatening kind of situation, they have to make a decision.
There are processes that happen. So if it is a life-threatening, there might be doctors that would come into the picture. There might be some advisory boards. But there are certain situations where things can just prolong for a long time. And it might be, there's a lot of medical advancements in terms of artificial machine that can keep people alive for a long time. Those can come into effect as well when such conflict is happening. So just to be on the safe side, it's better. And it could be your spouse. You could absolutely pick your spouse, like I have. But to put thought into that document when you have the capacity to do so just eliminates that possibility of conflict at that time. And honestly, at that time when things are so challenging, the last thing you want is for families to be fighting each other. So if there's something already in place, that's just to be honored. That document needs to be honored. These were your wishes, and now the children would just honor that wish of yours. So it makes sense to think this through beforehand rather than leave it to chance and hope that everyone will be in agreement, because these things can really bring up a lot of intense emotions and feelings about certain situations.
Do you want to bring up the document?
Not yet. I just wanted to go through. Okay, so as I mentioned, the document comes into effect only when you are unable to make a decision. You don't need a lawyer to complete this document. So inshallah, today, at the end of today, if there are people who are willing to and want to do this, we can do that. And we have a notary present, and we can get that signed. And the physician doesn't have to sign it either. So it's a document that you fill out, and then the notary notarizes it, and that's a complete document.
Can I just, there's a question for Auntie.
No, we brought it for you. This form is accessible from the Health and Human Services website, the government website, but we made copies today. So if you want a form and want to think about it, you can take that form, think it through, and then decide later. If you feel like you want to fill it out today, we can even assist you to do that today, inshallah. Yes.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, so
Can you repeat the question?
So who would next of kin be? So it's pretty specific. It's a hierarchical order. So the spouse is the first, and then adult children, and then you have siblings, and then you have parents. So it goes down the order. So if the spouse is not available or unwilling, then they go down the list. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Also, just to clarify, this particular situation is much more common in the West, and specifically in America, for example. Back home, we might not have this issue, right? Because it's pretty much given that somebody will make decisions on behalf of the patient. Second is, in our culture, sometimes, let's say there are two children and both have a different opinion. So this has happened in families that I know, where a son might say, I remember mom said, and the other one said, no, I remember mom said. So this I remember is one way to remove the doubt, is if you have this paperwork. So Islamically speaking, there's nothing controversial here. It's taking your wishes and making it known, basically, in the event that it's needed. That's the way to think of it. Back home, this might not be that important because there is somebody who people trust who will make your decision known. In this country, because independence is important, so if you have wishes that you want to make known, then this is the document to use for that.
Even over there, sometimes they have conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, yeah. So what I'm saying is, in this country, this document holds more value once it's written. So if this document is written, your wishes are established. Then if there's a dispute, a disagreement, the document trumps all opinions. That's why it's a power of attorney. So from a legal perspective, you can have power of attorney, and then you can have power of attorney for this, for that, for that. You can have an all power of attorney, or you can have a medical power of attorney. So this only speaks about your medical wishes. Go ahead.
And things can get really complicated. Like I mentioned, with advanced technology, everything is so much more complex now. There are options now. And so when there is a medical power of attorney paperwork in place, that person who is ill may not be as able to make some of those decisions. They may be in a very vulnerable state. They may be even at a point where they're not understanding some of the complexities, because with illnesses, that can impact your cognition, the way you reason. So having this in place just allows you to be there for your loved one as well. And so even if, for example, going to a doctor's visit, if you are the healthcare agent, you have more leverage to be able to ask some questions on behalf of your loved one. Because again, as Abbas said, in the West, autonomy is very much celebrated. It's an important value, and so they really want to make sure that they're talking to the patient and they're making decision based on what the patient wants. But if the patient is at that point where they're having a really hard time and they want to be able to say, I don't want to deal with this, this is my healthcare agent, I have appointed this person in a legal manner, I would like this person to make those decisions. Then it's easier for that loved one to be able to then step in and help you navigate that system. So,
Should we bring up the form?
not yet.
Okay.
So this form, you can revoke this form at any time. So you could fill out, so for example, today if you decided, okay, I'm going to fill out this form and I'm going to name my son Muhammad as the primary agent, okay? And then you name other two people. Now say 2 years later, Muhammad decides to move back to another country or another state. At that time, you may decide that that's not going to work now. You need someone who's more local. So you can't make changes on that form. You can't scribble anything out. It's a legal form. You can't make changes there, but you can make a new form and revoke the old form. You just have to make sure that if you've made copies to share with others, which is it's encouraged to do so, you want to make sure that you're letting the other people know or the other institutions know that there is an updated version of that copy. So it's not set in stone. It's not like if you choose someone today, that's it, forever and ever. No, you can always revoke that and come up with a new document. You should make copies of the medical power of attorney, especially for your healthcare agent, because like I said, if you're in a situation in a car wreck, you're not going to be able to tell the person where that document is. So make those copies, give that to the agent, give it to other family members, give it to institutions like your PCP, your primary care physician, or your specialist, maybe your lung doctor, or whoever is involved in your care. Let their office have a copy of that paperwork. And then revisit the document as circumstances may have changed. So we talked about relocation, for example. Another consideration is divorce. Say you appointed your spouse as your healthcare agent, but then unfortunately you ended up divorcing the spouse. That document is null and void in case of a divorce. So now you have to redo the paperwork. So make sure you're revisiting these documents whenever there is some sort of a change. All right, next slide, please. So we talked a little bit about this in our discussion, but who to pick? That's something you really have to put some thought into. Definitely has to be someone who is close to you, who knows you, someone you trust, someone who understands your medical history, someone who understands your belief systems, what's important for you at a time when you may not be able to share that. Also, very important, someone who's accessible and willing. I have a patient right now whose primary agent is her oldest son, but he lives in Iowa. They used to live in Iowa, and then she moved to be with a younger son. So the younger son is the first alternate agent, right? But the son in Iowa is the main primary agent. So by law, we have to consult the main agent. But it gets very difficult if someone is in a different state because you're dealing with someone who is local. So the younger son had to get the older brother to verbally write out that he was giving up his authority to him to be the one to make the decision. And then he signed off on that, and now the younger son can make a decision. But there are extra steps that you have to take. And again, it can delay issues, it can cause unnecessary wait periods. So make sure you're revisiting the document and making the primary agent someone who is accessible and who is willing to take on that task. And it should be someone who is very much aware of your situation. So this person should be the one who maybe accompanies you to the doctor's office, maybe follows up on your medical history and makes sure that they're aware of what's going on. Sorry, you had a question?
Yeah, is that form the same as directive?
Very good question. A lot of
Can you
times
repeat the
it
question?
gets,
Can you repeat the
is,
question?
is the form the same as directive? So it's not. So the directive to physician is another form of an advanced directive.
What is the doctor?
So that's why I'm coming to the directive. Yeah, the directive is a form that says what your wishes would be if you were ever in a situation where you had a condition that was irreversible. So say, again, we take an example of a car accident, and now you're in a coma, for example, and the doctors are saying that there is no way you can come back from this situation. Now you are in a situation where maybe there isn't much activity going on, like you're at the brink of death. The only thing keeping you alive is maybe machines, right? So you might be on an artificial breathing machine, for example. The directive to physician allows you to say, if ever I am in that situation, then I either want to be kept alive on the artificial machinery, or I do not want to be kept alive in an artificial manner, and I want to be allowed to have a natural death. So and it's called directive to physician because it's actually directing the physician. It's telling the physician, if I'm ever in that situation, this is what I want you to do. So at that point, your medical power of attorney will look at that directive and say, you have made that choice, so I'm going to just reinforce that. And I'm going to make a decision based on what you said in that directive. So it's another very important advanced directive document. But if you were to do just one document, I would say you do the medical power of attorney document. Because,
Do we have to have two both?
I'm sorry?
Do we have to have both?
No, you don't have to have any. It's not mandatory to have any.
No,
But-
for our,
But if you wanted one,
yeah.
it's better to have all of them. But if you were to choose one, then absolutely I would say have the medical power of attorney. Someone who you trust, who can make a decision based on the circumstance. Because right now we are kind of thinking about, well, what if this were to happen? What if you were in this situation? There's a lot of scenarios that you're trying to create. But that medical power of attorney will give that person that you've picked the right to look at the situation as it is in real time and say, okay, these are the options. These are the expectations. These are the goals. These are the possible success rate of this surgery or this intervention. Now, how do we make a decision based on all of that? So when you give that person that freedom to consider all of it, then you're not restricting them. You're trusting them to make that choice for you. And in that form, there's actually, and we'll go through the form, there is an area that says, but certain things I don't want or certain things I want. So you do have a choice to write a few things out and say this specifically I don't want. So for example, I have a lot of older patients who specifically write out, don't keep me alive on an artificial machine. I don't want to be kept alive on just a breathing machine. Or don't put a feeding tube in me if I'm not able to swallow. So there are some very specific things.
That's on the NPOA?
There is a part, yes.
Okay.
But the recommendation, again, is to not restrict your agent. So it's better to not write too many things because you don't know the circumstance, right? You want that agent to have the ability to make choices based on the need. So, for example, if you needed a feeding tube for a short period of time, so say, for example, you went into surgery and you were supposed to recover normally, but something maybe happened in surgery, now you're not able to eat on your own, for example, right? And so maybe that feeding tube needs to be put in place just for a short period of time until you recover and are able to now eat and drink on your own, right? So you may get to the point where you're able to do this after you've had a chance to heal. But if you put specifically down in your document that you absolutely don't want a feeding tube, now you're restricting the agent to make that choice for you where it might have been a better choice. So it's better to keep that open, but tell your agent, tell them that that is not what I would want. I'll trust you to make the choice when the time comes, but that is not how, I don't want to be a prisoner of tubes and machines. That's not how I want. And so you have the ability to have these conversations. And that's why we're starting these conversations, because those conversations are not easy. Nobody wants to really talk about these things. It's very uncomfortable to have a conversation with someone you love and say, if that time comes, what would you want? There are some very brave people, like, for example, my grandma on my maternal side, my mother's mother. She very clearly told my mother and her siblings at one point that she did not want to go to the hospital. She made it very clear. And this is when she was in her advanced stages of her illness. So when that time came, when she became very sick, and there were other family members that said, well, should we take her to the hospital? Her children were able to say, she said clearly that she did not want that. And so they were able to provide care at home, and eventually she died at home how she had wanted. So all this to say is that
Okay, Auntie.
So all that to say is that you really have to make an effort to have these conversations. And even if it may be that you bring up a conversation and your child says, oh, why do we have to talk about this? We don't need to worry about this right now. Find the courage to say, but we need to have this conversation. Because especially living in the West, where technology is very advanced and there's a lot of confusion around options and choices, you really want to be able to have had those conversations before you're in the middle of a crisis. Yes, Auntie. Alaikum salam.
Now that Sabia is talking so much about the advancement in technology, I'm glad she's bringing all this up for all of us to know that I have another thing to add to that. This is also a litigation-oriented society. Okay? So sometimes the physicians have to step in. It's like, well, what do we do? So if you've had a really bad stroke, for example, you're bleeding and it's decided that you're really no brain activity, you're not going to do it. So you don't want your family members to argue over, put them on a ventilator, when the medical people are saying this is how it's going to be. And Islamically, there have been people who have been put on the ventilator for weeks and weeks and weeks. And it's very difficult to make a decision to take them off. So that is a very painful decision in the end to say, okay, take him off.
Yeah.
So consider that also.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that perspective. And you're right, it's a very challenging time at that time. And a lot of emotions are involved at that time. And our brain, mashallah, in an amazing way, is wired in such a way that when we're faced with crisis, it becomes very primitive. Our brain at that time is only trying to protect us. So some of these higher functioning, like reasoning, being able to weigh options, we're not able to do that. So many times I will have patients who have come from the hospital, now they're home, we're working with them, and we talk to the spouse or the children, and we say, well, what did the doctor say about this? And they're like, it's all very blurry in my head. I can't really remember. There's so much that was going on. And it's actually a scientific thing. The brain is just not able to manage all of that information when the emotions are so high and you're so stressed. There's a lot of stress around this. So to have these conversations when it's calm, it's quiet, we're healthy, and we're able to do a little bit of back and forth to understand exactly what is it that we're trying to understand and help each other understand is very critical. Because the last thing you want is to get in the middle of a crisis, and now there's a sense of urgency, there's a lot of pressure to make choices, and there's a lot of voices that are telling you one way or the other. And as Auntie mentioned, we're in a society where people are afraid to be sued. So they may offer certain interventions just because they have to. And that doesn't mean that we have to take those and accept them. We have to empower ourselves with information and knowledge and be able to ask some of those hard questions. And I guarantee you this, if you think through some of the questions you want, if you take a little Post-it and you write down some of your questions before you go to the doctor's office, and you tell the doctor that I want to ask you some questions, if you are empowered to ask those questions, that doctor will also be empowered to sit down and have that conversation with you. So it has to take some work on our part to kind of understand what's going on, what the options are, what the possibilities are, and what is it that you're thinking, and taking Islamic guidance in the fold, because we have to be the ones to tell our healthcare team, well, this is my faith. This is what my faith tells me, and this is how my faith guides me. I'll give you a really simple example. Mateen, my son, he had his wisdom teeth removed 2 weeks ago. We wanted to get that done right before Ramadan started. And so he was healing well, but then he had a little bit of an area where it needed some more medication. And so the doctor started him on a medication. This was 2 days before Ramadan started. And when I picked up the medication, I realized that the medication dosage was 3 times a day, right? And now I was worried because Ramadan was starting, and Mateen wanted to be able to fast. And so I thought, how am I going to do this? So I reached out to the dentist, and I explained to him that we have the month of fasting coming. I have this dosage. Is there any way we can do this in a way that he can fast? And I explained, what the requirements of the fast was. It was amazing. He came back and he gave me a solution to be able to take 2 at a certain time and then 1 at a certain time. And Mateen has been able to take the medication and continue fasting. So sometimes it takes effort on our part to speak up and say, this is what I need for me to be able to practice my faith. Can you help me figure out how we can do this in a way that supports what I need to do for my faith? Next slide, please.
Uncle's got a
Yes.
comment.
That point is very important about you talking to someone.
Yes,
It's very common
yes,
that doctors who are not Muslim,
yes,
they prescribe medicine
yeah,
and they say 2-3 times a day, this and this, this and this. And poor Muslim person was not really sick,
yes,
doesn't fast.
yes,
So I mean, my friends come to my attention, they're not fasting because doctor said don't fast.
yeah,
I said, no, that's not right.
yeah,
Talk to the doctor if you can arrange the medicines.
exactly.
And number 2, is your doctor Muslim? They said, no. I said, talk to a Muslim doctor, only he can tell you whether you can fast or not. Because non-Muslim doctors don't know. They don't know the importance of fasting. They think it's something not very good.
Yeah.
So,
But I think, Uncle, a conversation sometimes is really what it takes. And I have found in my experience in working in healthcare that people are really open to understanding. What you don't know is what causes a lot of fear, misunderstandings, mistrust. But if you're willing, if you feel confident in your own understanding of what you are doing, whether it's fasting or doing things a certain way, and you're willing to advocate for yourself and for your religion, I have found more than not, people are very appreciative. And in fact, you may have done a service to a whole bunch of other Muslim patients that this doctor may end up serving, and may have a bit of an open understanding then about what is needed to make this patient feel like their faith is being supported. So conversations are really important. I'm a huge believer in that. Open it up. Let's see where it goes. Yeah.
Next slide.
Yeah. So
Now we
what
need,
I would like to do now is go through the medical power of attorney document, just to give you an idea of what this document is like. So in the beginning, it's really simple, where you're asserting who you are. So you're putting your name, and then you're appointing, where it says name, that primary agent. So this is where you're putting that main person that you want, that you've thought about, who you would want to speak for you if you were in a position where you couldn't speak. So you put their name, you put their address, and you put their phone number. And it's really important to have all of that filled out. Sometimes I'll have people will say, well, I'm going to put that name down, but I don't have their address. I'll do it later. But it's really important to get all of that done, because in the event of an emergency, this person needs to be reachable, right? And then that part, the limitations on the decision-making authority of my agent are as follows. This is the one I was talking about. This is where if you have something very specific that you would want over there, you have the option to put it. Again, the recommendation usually is to leave that open, because we don't know what the circumstance may be. And then if you go down, this is where you have the ability to designate 2 other alternate agents. So your first primary agent, if that person is there and is able to make that decision for you, great. If that person is not accessible, if they're not available, or sometimes they may say, I can't make this choice. It may be too difficult for them to make the choice. Then they would give the authority to the first alternate. And so you need their name, their address, their phone number, and then the same for the second alternate agent. And then the original of the document is kept at, you have a choice. Now here is where I will request that you not put it in a locked safe, because we have a tendency to put our most valuable documents far, far away. This is a document that needs to be accessible. And if you lock it up in a safe that nobody has access to, then you've rendered it useless. So make sure it's an accessible document. Keep a copy on yourself. Give the agent a copy for sure. Give family members. Give your doctors, just like we talked about. So make sure people know what you have chosen and where there is. And then it gives you a chance to write the following individuals or institutions have signed copies, and you can name 2. And then if you continue to go down, this is where it says the duration. Now, for example, when I gave you the example of a surgery, say I'm going into surgery and I just want to appoint someone to speak for me while I'm in surgery. And once I'm out of the surgery, then I want that power of attorney to end. I have the choice to put an end date to it. So I could say if my surgery was 10th of March, then I'd say this ends on the 20th of March, giving 10 days for recovery and for me to be able to do that. So people will do that. It's like a temporary, time-limited, event-specific medical power of attorney. But I would suggest if you were doing one where it's not really something for a specific reason, then don't put any end date to it. Just leave it blank. Okay, now we've talked a little bit about what this document is, but this part goes into detail. So basically, if you scroll down just a little bit, it says that this authority is only effective when you're not able to make a decision. So a lot of people worry that if I sign this now, what if my son makes choices for me? I don't want that. That is not going to happen. It's only when you get to a point where you're not able to make that choice. And the reason, again, we talked about why we need to do it now is because something could happen. We could be in an accident. We don't have to wait to be diagnosed with a chronic illness to start these documents. Abbas and I both have these documents, right? You want to have this in place at whatever age, because we never know. We talked about how it should be someone you know and trust. It must be someone 18 years of age or older. You should let them know and have conversations about, this document. And if you'll scroll down, again, this just asserts that you can make choices for yourself until you get to a point where you're not able to do so. If you continue going down, okay. Now, this power of attorney needs to be either witnessed by 2 people. And one of the witness cannot be a family member by marriage or by blood. It has to be someone totally unrelated. And the second signature can be anyone. But if you have it notarized, then you don't need witnesses. So if today, inshallah, if someone wants to get this done, we have a notary, Auntie Malik Taj, so she can notarize it, and that document is complete. You don't need to do anything else to it. That document is valid, and it's a complete document. So then this goes down, if you keep scrolling down, so this gives you the option for the notary to notarize it, and then if you keep scrolling down, there will be a place, keep scrolling down. Go ahead, all the way down. Yes, so this is where the witnesses would sign it if the notary is not available. And that's pretty much what this document is. Yes?
If we decide that, for example, our children
Yes.
to be the executor,
Yes.
and we want to do it at home, can both be from the family?
The witnesses?
Yes.
So one of the witnesses cannot be a family member. So the best person would be either a neighbor
Mhm.
or a friend. You want one person has to be, and the document has a whole list of who it cannot be. So your best bet is to not have anyone who is in any way related to the family. It has to be a completely unrelated party. So like I said, a neighbor, usually when I do it with families, I will ask if they have a neighbor who would be willing to witness, or they will have a friend come over and they can witness.
Just like a will.
Just like a will, very much like a will. And the conditions of witnesses are very similar for these documents. Yes.
If you notarize it, you still need it?
No, no. So you just, yeah,
You notarize it, you notarize it, we don't need.
You don't
no,
have
you don't need it. It's one or the other, to witness or a notary. So one or the other.
So we can take it, for example, to the.
You can take it to the bank, absolutely.
Or you can bring it to IABA.
You or IABA, yeah?
Yeah.
Brother Parvez is a notary.
Yeah, and Anti-Malik Taj
And
is a
Anti-Malik
notary
Taj on the
too.
ladies' side. So,
My wife notarized mine,
Yeah,
then she can.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Do you have to give it to your doctor or, you know?
No, but so once you've done this, take a copy to your doctor's office. Your doctor needs to know who it is that you have chosen to be your advocate, your healthcare proxy, if you were not able to make a choice. Yeah, so it's important that your doctor knows that. And if you are in a situation where if you are, for example, the agent for someone else, and they have doctor's appointments, please go with them. It's really important to have an idea of what's going on so that you, when you are asked to make a decision, you can make an informed decision based on what you have learned in those doctor's visits. Any questions on this document? Is there an interest in either getting the document done or taking a copy home to review and take a look?
we have copies here, so we'll
Yeah.
give those out to everybody.
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
I think that the thing to remember, and if anybody online, watching online has
Yeah,
questions, you
just
can
reach out.
you can text me, and I can answer the question as well. I think the another way to understand this paperwork, knowledge is power, and so having these conversations is the first step in our communities to be able to have open discussions with family, for example. Inshallah, you don't need this. Inshallah, you don't need it. But if you do need it, and if it's not there, reversing it is problematic in this country. That's the dilemma we have. So you have, for example, Islamic will. There's an Islamic will. We are required to have it with us all the time, right? If you don't have it, the system kicks in. If the system kicks in, it's going to create problems. So that's why Islamic will is necessary. This document, so you have a medical power of attorney, advanced directive, which we haven't talked about, but we touched on, DNR, do not resuscitate, that's another document. In this country, there are so many different documents that we need to understand these documents, and then they may not apply to you. Each one of us is in a separate situation. But the idea is to have these conversations at home. Our problem is sometimes we don't even have these conversations at home, right? So for example, to sit with your children and to say, listen, I'm signing this paperwork, and this is what it means, and this is where it can be found. And if you never need it, alhamdulillah. But if you do need it, you know where it is.
And also, I think it's really important. I had shared this example at our last funeral. We were traveling to Tanzania, East Africa. That's where we're from. And we always go to the cemetery when we arrive, pretty much within the next day or two. It's our tradition, we do that. We go and we pay our respects to our family members who have passed. And we take the whole family, the kids and everyone, they know this is a tradition. And as we were walking around the cemetery, and it's a place that's very significant to us because we used to visit the cemetery as children, and we've kind of grown up with the cemetery, and we have a lot of loved ones who are buried there. And so both Abbas and I were talking about how peaceful it is. And Mateen suddenly said, would you want to be buried here? And so without thinking, I said, yes, I would. And then I thought about it. And I realized that in his mind now he's thinking, my mother said that she would want to be buried in this cemetery in Tanzania. And so I told him, I said, but Mateen, it really depends where I die, right? Wherever I die, that's my place to be buried. So now what I did was I assured him that if I were to die, the voice that would have, had I not continued to say, but wherever I die would be my final resting place, in his mind as my son, he would have thought, my mom's wish was to die and be buried in Tanzania. And so he may have done, I don't know what, to make sure that that wish was carried out. So sometimes we are not very careful about what we say. We say things that we are wishful about, but we have to be sure that what we're saying is also practical, because that voice will play in our loved one's head when that time comes. And you want to make sure that you've given them the gift of understanding clearly what you were trying to say, so that if that were to happen, hopefully Mateen would remember that, yes, I had expressed a wish, but I had also told him that wherever I do die should be my final resting place. And he would have that burden lifted from his shoulder from having to carry out what he may be thinking was my wish. So having these conversations, even though it's really hard, it's such a gift that you give to your loved ones, because it makes it easier for them to carry out those duties that they have to carry out as your children or as your family members. So again, have the courage to have those conversations, to talk about things that matter.
And this, in fact, we have a case in our community right now. There's a person who has called me and he said that my father told me, "Mujhe wapas Pakistan jana hai. I want to go back to Pakistan." And he has told me that this concept is so difficult for me. I don't mind expense, but it's so difficult for me. Can you sit down with my father and explain it to him? And so I haven't had this conversation yet, but I'm meaning to, because just repatriating the body, repatriating meaning prepare it to be taken overseas. The logistical challenges, apart from the Islamic perspective, just the logistical challenges of getting a body transported overseas, the visa, the preparation. Islamically, it is definitely not recommended. In fact, there are many hadith that we have that say that wherever you die, that is where you are meant to be. Repatriating the body back home is so complicated. We had one case where the body, I won't say which country it was, but they couldn't get a visa. So the body was in refrigeration for almost a month, just waiting for the visa for the body. And then once the visa came through, they had to prepare the body. So they take out all the fluids from the body. I mean, it's so complicated. But while alive, if somebody says, I want to be taken back home, that's a conversation that needs to be had.
Visa for what?
For the body. Yeah, but he didn't have paperwork
I
to
think
go
it's
back home.
Permits.
Yeah,
So-
a dead body, to be transported, you need permit.
Permits.
Sorry, not visa, paperwork.
Permits.
Paperwork, yeah. Sorry, not visa, paperwork. When you transport a body in a coffin, you don't want customs to stop it, right? So paperwork for that, yeah, all those kinds of stuff, yeah. Yes, Auntie?
In fact, even trying to move a body within different states is difficult.
Oh, yeah.
Yesterday, a cousin of mine was buried in California. He died in Atlanta. And it's because his parents, both his parents, were buried in California, and a nephew was buried. It became difficult. And because this young man had it was discovered later he had a heart condition, he died by himself at home. It became a police case. So you see what all goes on. It gets more and more difficult.
Yeah.
And when people make these things of take me here, take me there, I think it's, like you say, they have to have family conversations, because it makes it extremely difficult for those who are surviving.
Yeah.
And I think even if we go back to our conversation yesterday, where we talk about the dignity of the body, and if you look at our Islamic guidelines on how we have to treat the body, we talked about camphor yesterday, and we talked about how in such a beautiful way it preserves the dignity of a body that's decomposing. So Islam, in recommending that quick burial, it puts all these things in place in order to be able to uphold the dignity of the body. And so we really have to think through some of these decisions or some of these wishes and look at it, kind of holding it together and seeing, are we really upholding the Islamic guidelines as we try to also honor our wishes? And again, those are not easy conversations, but these are conversations that have to happen sooner rather than later. Yes.
For some of us, like from Iraq, it is important to give the Najib, you know.
Yeah.
So
I think it's a very personal decision, but I think you just have to have sometimes it's even when you know what's involved, and after knowing you still believe that's the decision you would want, that's fine. But I think it's important to talk about this. For example, understanding that permits need to be involved, or what they would need to do to a body in order to. So you just have to know. And then when you know, then you're making an informed choice. You're not just saying, I want this, and then your family has to go through 10 different things to make that. And for that family, it's very important to honor your wish, because they have to live with that. For that child to feel that they were not able to honor your wish really complicates their grief, and it doesn't allow them to grieve and heal in a natural way, because that burden is always on them. So I think we really have to look at the bigger picture.
Well, explain to them what's the situation, circumstances, you know, and
Yes.
I'll do my best.
Yes.
Just tell them I'll do
Yes.
my best.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Does someone have to have an Islamic, type of will, word by word and everything, or I can designate someone, like my wife, my daughter, that she is the sole, because that's how I made mine. I made my daughter in charge of everything. So everything that I have, and I designated my wife after my son, I put some alternative, that she is responsible for whatever I have. And then at her discretion, whatever she wants to give her brother, her mother, pay this, pay that, whatever she wants. So it's comprehensive responsibility, but she accepted that, she didn't say no. She didn't ask me to, just put me in charge. But I thought because she's wise and I trusted her, so in my will I said, I designate my daughter, such and such, to be in charge of my asset, my estate, to whatever she decides. I tell you. Does that contradict the Islamic will?
Yeah, so the question is, the question is about Islamic wills and specifically designating your daughter in your case, right? So it's important to we're going to have a special workshop just on Islamic wills, because it's important to understand what the Islamic criteria is for a will. As far as how you designate and who you designate and what verbiage you have and is it Islamic, all that is secondary. Primary is what Islam says about how to bequeath. While you are alive, you should state how you want your assets to be divided. That is fixed, and that has a formula. And then if you appoint a certain person to take the portion that can be given to whoever you decide or they decide, that's okay. So what you have done is you've appointed an agent and you've made them responsible. Islamically speaking, that is not okay, because Islam gives you directions of how to distribute your estate while you are alive. That is how your will should be written. So that's why we need to have a separate workshop just on Islamic wills.
In the meantime, is there any literature that I can
Yes.
read about
Yes.
Islamic will?
Yes, yeah. So the question is there any literature? Yes. There's some guidance that we will give. I can share that with you. I'll give it to you about we have lots of online templates that give us guidance on how to do Shia Islamic will. I'll share that with you.
Valid in here? Can you
Yes.
use it?
Yeah, that's the point. Yeah, that's the point. Is if you can have a will to say whatever you want. There's family estate and Texas law,
Yeah.
but if you have a will, the will be honored, and that's why it's highly recommended to have a will. And the fact that you have an Islamic will is even better, right? So
What I'm asking is the Islamic will, is it valid for the state?
yes,
Go to the state?
Yes.
Okay, this is
Yes, I have one, and I got with an attorney, and so we'll have a separate workshop just on that. It's very important. A lot of,
Gentleman, he was here, Ali.
no, I think I wasn't here when he was here, right? Did he,
I think he touched on,
he,
he touched on some things, yeah.
yeah, I wasn't here when he was here. I have his PowerPoint, I'll go through it. But yeah, so we're gonna have a separate workshop just on writing Islamic wills. Okay, we're a little bit short of time,
Yeah.
so you ready?
Yeah.
I want to quickly give an update on this stuff, and then we can get questions at the end about this. Okay, I lost my slides. You have the slides up there, Habibi?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So a lot of people are asking for updates, cemetery update, website update, funeral resources and stuff like that. And so I'm going to go through all of this, but I'm going to go through it a little bit different. Next slide, please. So the way I work, generally, this is whether I'm at home, at work, my businesses, whatever. I'm a very methodical person. I do things very methodically. So I wanted to explain. I forgot to change the title. I put full enchilada up there. I was supposed to change that. I know, I was hungry. It was Ramadan. I wanted to explain how I think of the things that we need to do. And what was that saying that you said about the seed? You want to repeat that? Plant the seed, but you may not enjoy the shade. What was that saying?
Oh, so the idea is that you may plant a seed, but you may not live long enough to enjoy the shade of that tree. But doing that, planting that seed, is your contribution for generations to come. So
Yeah.
the work we do right now, we may not see the full benefit of, but you start that work, then eventually someone will be able to benefit.
Yeah.
I just planted something was so windy and blow.
It blew away. Inshallah, it'll go somewhere and plant somewhere else. It'll be shady. So what I'm trying to say is I'm a visionary. I try to imagine how things will be with my grandchildren, and so this is the way I'm envisioning how we need to be prepared for that, right? So Mujtaba right now is very young. Inshallah, when he becomes the chair of whatever committee, we need to have everything in place to make his job easy. Right? So that's the way I think of things. So as far as funeral is concerned, a lot of people are passionate about the cemetery and let's get a cemetery and let's get a cemetery. I want to explain all the things that are needed so that we can have everything in place, of which the cemetery is one part. Right? So that's one. Two, I'm a Khoja. And I don't know how many people know, but we Khojas, Ali Bhai will also tell you, we have bounced around a lot of places. So whenever we arrive at a place, we want to make sure that we understand everything about that place, so that we become good custodians of the place. So in America, I've come to understand the cemetery business and how commercial it is, and so I've taken time to understand everything around it. So that's kind of overall the way I think. So I just wanted to explain that. So I've broken it down into 8 steps. The full funeral life cycle is made up of these 8 steps, the way I see it. One is the financials, right, the cost of burial. Second is the concept of a funeral director, and I'll go into all of these. Third is the hearse, the transportation. Fourth is the funeral home, right, where the body is stored. Fifth is the washing facility and the ghusl khana, as we call it. Sixth is the cemetery itself. 7 is the tombstones. And then 8th is the logistics and the resources that we as a community need. Right? So these are the 8 different parts that make up, to me, the full enchilada. Okay, next slide, please. So let's go one by one and talk about, for example, financials. So from a financial perspective, today in Austin, if somebody were to die, Shia, Ithnashari, in Austin, to have a funeral, the cheapest option we have right now is if we do the washing at North Lamar and we do the burial at Dale. It costs us today $1,750. This is the cheapest option. And I know that many in the Iraqi community, are very cost conscious, and so this is the cheapest option that we have right now, especially if they don't have anything in place. The second option is we do the washing at Eternal Peace, which is where we've done many of our recent ghusls, but we do the burial at Dale Cemetery. In that case, Eternal Peace charges us $3,000, and then Dale would charge us $1,000. So that's the plot and everything. So that's $4,000. The other one that we've done recently, and we've done two like this, is where we do the washing at Eternal Peace, and we do the burial in Georgetown. That one costs us around $7,000. And then the last one, which is the most expensive, which is the one that most of us are opting for right now, is we do the washing at Eternal Peace, and we do the burial at Cook Walden. This one costs us $10,000 after discount. Before discount, it's around $12,000. So we're getting a $2,000 discount. Roughly, $10,000. So this is where we are money-wise to do a burial today in Austin. People have asked about donations. What do we have available? And I wanted to clarify. We have some funds in the IABA funeral account, which is around $9,000 we've collected. This is money that people have donated, money that we've collected. We have around $9,000.
That's not much.
Oh, that's not a lot at all. Yeah, maybe one funeral we can afford. Yes, yeah. So just to give people an idea. And then as far as the plots go, there's a lot of confusion around here. And I'll go into the cemetery update. But today, IABA has 4 plots in their name. So IABA, the entity, has 4 plots in their name. If anybody does die and we as a funeral committee decide that we want to give this plot, we have 4 plots. We also have individuals who have plots who have donated to IABA that may consider donating again. It's a case-by-case basis. Like that, we have around 10 to 12 plots that may be donated to IABA, depending on the situation. So far, IABA has used around 10 plots. Some IABA had, some were donated. So we've used this in the past, and it's worked, alhamdulillah. The last thing that I wanted to talk about is the burial assistance program. So this is a program I was hoping to start this year, but I've been so busy with other stuff, I have not had a chance to do it. There are 2 burial programs right now that are being done. One is being done in Orlando. That's what I call V1, and one is being done in Minnesota, which is V2. And when I say Orlando and Minnesota, these are Shia Ithnashri centers that have a burial assistance program. Let me mention Orlando, for example. Orlando's burial assistance program is so popular right now, so popular, that people are actually trying to become members of Orlando just so they can benefit from the burial assistance program. The burial assistance program at Orlando was started 7 years ago. Right now it is so popular that people are trying to become members so that they can benefit from the burial assistance program. This is a huge program, it's very successful, but it's complicated, and I want to do a separate session just on that. And then Minnesota has just started their burial assistance program. It's structured a little bit differently, and I'm also studying that right now. I have the paperwork and I'm going through it right now as well. So next slide, please. So that's the financials. Okay, items 2 to 5. I know Auntie has been asking about this quite a bit, so I just wanted to, yes, Aga.
So I don't know if the client yet asked question, but you mentioned Georgetown. It looks familiar. Where is the Georgetown?
Georgetown is in North Austin.
But I know.
I'm joking, Aga.
We didn't have any cemetery, Muslim cemetery.
Yes, I'll come to that when I talk about the cemetery. The Georgetown option, I will come to that when I come to the cemetery.
So is this the site that Brother Asad and Brother Hasnan were trying to start by before?
No, Aga, no. I'll come to that when I talk about the cemetery. The question was about Georgetown. I'll discuss that in the cemetery update. So items 2 to 5, I'm quickly going to go over these because there isn't a major update. We haven't made much progress, but I just wanted people to know that it is part of the vision for the funeral committee. Funeral director. So in Texas, if you become a funeral director, so Imam Noor is a funeral director. Let me give you an example of one of the best experiences I had of doing ghusl and burial with Imam Noor. He called me around 10 o'clock. I called him around 10 o'clock in the morning to say we have a brother who has passed away. And he told me, Abbas, where did the death happen? And I said, at home. And do we have the medical paperwork? Do we have the release? And I said, yes, we do. The family had it. It was a patient who was at home, and he passed away at home. We managed to pick up the body at 11, do the ghusl by 12 o'clock, do namaz-e-janaza, and we had the burial by 5 p.m. that day. This is a beautiful example of how a good Muslim burial should be. But there are so many things here that happen to work out. Number one, death was at home. Number two, this was a patient who already had been given end of life, so the doctor signed off on the paperwork. Number three, Imam Noor is a funeral director. He can pick up the body. Only a funeral director can pick up the body. Number four, because he has access to the Texas death registry, he can also do the paperwork for the death certificate. Number five, North Lamar, the ghusl was done over there. Number six, because he knows the time of Dhuhr, he managed to send an email out and people were able to attend the Salatul Janazah. Number six, he allowed me to do the burial at ICGA Cemetery in Dale, which he still allows us to do, provided, there's some specific allowances that he makes, and I work with him on that. And then finally, and most importantly, is because they own the cemetery, so they just made one phone call to the grave digger, he came and he dug the grave. Right? So they have this process down. Inshallah, we can get there as well, but there's so many steps that need to happen. First is a funeral director. To become a funeral director, you have to take a course. You can become a provisional funeral director, and then you have to take a course. You have to do embalming. You have to do go to an autopsy, and you have to pass all these things before you can become a funeral director. Once you become a funeral director, you can then transport the body, and that's the key thing that we don't have, is the ability to transport the body. So if we had a ghusl khana here, for example, we still would need to get a funeral director to go pick up the body. We still would need a car to transport the body, because Ali and I cannot go transport the body. We're not funeral directors. We don't have a place to store the body, so we still need Eternal Peace to store the body. Today, North Lamar uses Eternal Peace, Capital Mortuary, to store their body. That's the morgue that they use to store their body. And they're very cost efficient, and pricing wise, they give us a good price. So items 2 to 5, funeral director, hearse for transportation, the funeral home to store the body specifically, so a mortuary, and the washing facility are all things that we need. But if we have them, for example, we still are dependent on other things. So we won't really be saving any money as such. For example, washing facility, if we had a washing facility today, if we still need Eternal Peace to pick up the body, if we still need Capital Mortuary to store the body, they will still charge us for that. And we have a package price with them right now. So having a place to wash the body solves one problem, but it doesn't give us total autonomy to be able to do everything that we need to do. So we need a funeral director, we need a transportation vehicle, and we need a place to store the body in order to be able to do this all ourselves. So ideally, when we have a ghusl khana, we have a funeral director, we have a hearse, then we can really have an efficient process where we don't need the services of a funeral home. Yes, ma'am.
How long does it take to get to be a funeral director?
Time is not the thing.
What kind of courses do you have?
Yeah, so the question is, what does it take? There's a website, you can go on the website, and everything is listed there. The question is, what does it take to become a funeral director? Time is not the criteria. It's just the steps that are needed. There's about 4 courses to take. You have to be under the supervision of another funeral director, and then you have to submit to some background checks and things like that, and then you get a provisional license for 6 months, and then you get the actual license after that. Yes, Agha?
You have a director already, is you?
No, I've signed up, but I haven't taken any courses yet. I'm working on it.
Yeah, because you know everything.
Yeah. I have a title of funeral chairman, which has been given to me, but I'm not a funeral director yet, as far as Texas is concerned.
Yeah, but I mean, you can use.
Thank you. I accept your nomination, Agha. I'm working on it. It will take time. Thank you, Agha. It will take time. I'm working on it. Inshallah. This is one of 8 things that I need to do just as far as funeral committee is concerned. So I'm working on it. Ali Bhai and I, I've talked about a lot of these things, and so I just want to give updates to say that we are aware and we're working on it.
Next slide.
Next slide, please. Okay, now let's talk about the cemetery, because this is the one I think most people are aware of, and is literally the one thing that costs us a lot of money, and I'll go through all the different options. So Dale, ICGA, I believe their second phase is now full, and now they're going to their third phase. They are having so many deaths in the Sunni community that their qabristan, their graveyard, is filling up very, very fast. But they have a lot of acreage, And so they're going to keep growing. So their cemetery is still there. It's still an option. The Dale Cemetery hasn't really changed their rules that much. They still have very strict rules. So for example, this has been a misconception. You have to follow their steps. This is true. You have to follow under the supervision of Imam Noor. But I work with Imam Noor whereby he gives us the ability to do things our way. But you cannot go there and demand. See, this is the problem we have, I think, is we think we can demand things from them. We can't demand things from them. This is a Sunni cemetery.
Are they Salafi or what kind of cemetery?
Well, it's an umbrella organization. And so ICGA, the land was donated to ICGA. ICGA is the custodian. And then under the umbrella organization, all the masajid have come together, and they now all work together. So they don't exclude Shias, but in their rules, they specifically say things that they want to be followed. And then they have a very nice clause in there, where they specifically call out the current director of the operation, who is Imam Noor. As long as he gives us permission to do it, it's okay. And so I work with him to get permission for everything. So we have done ghusl our way, we have done the janazah our way, we have done the burial our way, under his supervision. And his supervision is that he just sits there.
Do they let the people do the talqeen and all that?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, we have done the talqeen and we have done everything. But you have to work with them. You can't go in and demand it from them, because if you demand, they're going to say no. Right? So working with them it requires some relationship building. And that's what I've done with Imam. In fact, there was a funeral. Yasmin, your father's funeral? 3 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago, I went for a namaz janazah at ICGA, and Imam Noor saw me, and he said, he calls me Brother Bandali. He said, Brother Bandali, I haven't heard from you in a long time. And I said, Alhamdulillah, right? That means we don't need your services right now. But he knows that whenever we need his services, we call on him, and he allows us to do it. So they have funerals, I think they're about 2 a week on average right now, is what they're averaging. So they have a lot of funerals that they do. So Dale is an option. Georgetown, so there is a cemetery in Georgetown called Lady of the Rosary. And they have given us a section. They have asked us to commit to buying more graves. We haven't signed anything with them. So we had 2 burials over there, and they have allocated a section for us. The cemetery belongs to a family, and the family has allowed us to do the burials in that section. But they want to work with us, and so we owe them a visit. We haven't gone and visited with the family. We have to go there and work with them. So it's called Lady of the Rosary, and it's a cemetery in Georgetown. It's a beautiful cemetery. It's very nice. In fact, the Iranian family that had the burial over there, they said this reminds us of our hometown in Iran. It was, it's very beautiful. It's a very green burial friendly cemetery. They're very specific about things that they don't allow, and so it lines up very nicely with Islamic values. So we've done a burial over there, and alhamdulillah, it went well.
How many spots the people they can buy from there? How many?
So the section that they've carved out for us can accommodate around 50 plots.
50?
50, yeah.
So how much is the cost for each?
I have all the information I got, but I haven't finalized it with them. So I'm not at liberty to say, because I need to sit down and negotiate with them.
Is it cheaper than Cook
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's about half the price. It's about half the price. So a lot of people think, so the question is it cheaper than Cook Walden for those watching online? The problem is we are already locked into Cook Walden. We already have around 100 spaces at Cook Walden that we have purchased already. So we're kind of locked in there. What we have to do, and I'm getting to that in the next part here, right, is Cook Walden, are you at the Cook Walden section? Yeah. So the original section at Cook Walden, there were 700 spaces for the whole Muslim community, including Bohoras, Ismailis, Sunnis, and Shias. We have already purchased all 700 spaces. We haven't used all 700 spaces. We have just purchased all 700 spaces. Then they added 100 spaces next to the Muslim garden. All those 100 spaces are already gone. We purchased 20 of those. Now they are going into their new section, and they called me just 2 weeks ago to see, are we interested in more spaces? Their prices keeps going up. We started at $1,100 20 years ago. Right now, the last section that I committed to in the extension was $4,200. The new section that they're opening, each plot is $5,500. So their prices just keep going up. The problem is, today, if there is a death, right, we have certain options, and Cook Walden is an option. We should, in my opinion, we should no longer be signing more deals with them because they are very expensive. But we also need to have alternate solutions ready, which takes me to my third option, which is our own cemetery. So a lot of people have talked about having our own cemetery. So I've done a little bit of work, and zoning is the biggest problem. So City of Austin, City of Pflugerville, City of Georgetown, all these cities, let me explain it this way. If there is a piece of land that becomes a cemetery, if the owner of that land doesn't service the cemetery, the city takes it over. The city is very hesitant to allow a cemetery because they don't want to take care of a cemetery. So any city will make it very difficult to zone a cemetery. Therefore, you have to either get a zoning that is already cemetery, or you have to go for something which is called ETJ, extraterritorial jurisdiction. ETJ means there are no restrictions, or there are limited restrictions. So when you come to ETJ, there are several parcels of land that are available. One that we have looked at is near the Dale Cemetery, near the ICGA Cemetery, a little bit closer than that. It's about 20 acres, and I'm talking to somebody right now who's interested in buying half of it. So if they buy half, we might buy the other half. The problem is it's about an hour from here. There's another location that we have found in Pflugerville, which is about 20 minutes. It's about 5 acres, and so that's another potential. The problem is price. That Pflugerville Cemetery is around $1 million. It's 5 acres, and the zoning there's no restrictions on there. It's around 5 acres, but it'll cost us $1 million. So the problem with buying $1 million property is if you take the average cost right now, we've already spent in Cook Walden around $300,000 just buying lots. We're going to spend another $300,000 burying people over there. So all in all, we've already spent $600,000 just in that small piece of land at Cook Walden. So if we buy 5 acres, we are now provisioning for not the next generation, but the generation after that. So when Mujtaba becomes the chairman, all he has to do is make one phone call and the graveyard is ready in our own cemetery. That's what we have to plan for. So that is work that's ongoing, but it takes a lot of conversations and a lot of discussions, a lot of negotiation, and a lot of pricing and all that stuff. So Aliba is also on the lookout. Whenever he travels around and he sees a piece of property, we're exploring potential properties for our own cemetery. Okay.
What's the one in Dale?
The one in Dale, I believe it's around, last I checked, yeah, it's around $5 million.
The whole thing, the land is 25 acres.
25 acres, right? Yeah.
The whole thing.
The whole thing, yeah. So,
They started with using 1 acre and
yeah,
then gradually.
yeah.
How
they're
much
go-
is it?
The cost.
No, the,
Plot or?
The land, how much is it?
Oh, the land, somebody donated. Oh, you're talking about the
No,
new
I'm
land which
talking
is
about, he said there's
the
an
land next to the.
one in Pflugerville and the other one.
yes,
Someone
yeah,
purchased half of it.
yes, yeah, no,
That's
How
not.
much?
yeah, so let me explain. Dale Cemetery, which is around 25 acres, was a plot of land that was donated. So that they don't have any cost associated with that. There's just ongoing cost. The 20-acre land that I've looked at, so let me give you a number first of all. In 1 acre, we can have around 250 graves, between 250 to 300 graves in 1 acre. So at most, we need, say, 2 acres for, say, 500 graves. 500 graves is plenty, right? Now, 20 acres is a lot of land. So the way this 20 acres operates is there's a business in the front that is generating revenue. So the idea is to purchase this 20 acres, use 10 acres for cemetery, and then divide it into 2. 5 acres, 10 acres we would, 5 acres we would keep, 5 acres somebody else would keep, and then there'd be a business in the front that is generating revenue. So that's the way we're looking at it. So we're looking at it as a business that is generating revenue, and the price right now is around $4 million for 20 acres, because there's a business that is making money. So again, it's a discussion that I'm having with somebody, is if we purchase it, and then, because the way to think of a cemetery is today if I buy a piece of property, I don't think I'm going to have 5 burials this year. So that means we are sitting on $1 million property that is not generating any money. So we are putting money into it, right? When Mujtaba becomes the chairman, right, he will have a property that is now paying for itself, because all the money that people have purchased plots slowly over the years, we now have enough money for perpetuity, for the long-term care of the property. So when you look at a cemetery, you don't just look at the cost of the land. You have to look at the care and how we will finance it. So buying a business is beneficial because it will pay and offset some of the costs. So those are all the variables that you have to look at. So I'm working with an agent, I'm working with a broker, I'm working with somebody who already owns a funeral home to see if we can structure this deal such that, we can make it cost effective. So that's this. So I'll have more information to share, inshallah, when I have something concrete. Okay.
The one before.
Oh, did I miss a slide?
Yeah.
Which one is this one? Yeah, tombstones. So is Auntie here? Anjum Auntie?
Yes, she is.
Anjum Auntie, thank you. So I want to thank Anjum Auntie, because after Uncle Said passed away and we did his burial, and now she's been looking at tombstones, and she came and she said it's very confusing. Up until now, I really wasn't involved in tombstones, because I would just recommend the family to go to one of these places, Be Remembered or Riley. These are the 2 recommendations I had. And so Auntie went, and it was very confusing, very overwhelming. So then we went to the cemetery, we looked at all the options, so I made a couple of phone calls. And it turns out this is yet another money-making business. So tombstones in general there are so many choices, so many materials, so many sizes, so many engravings. And so I'm working on it right now. I don't have a lot of details to share, but what I can share is that I talked to Orlando, and Orlando decided to buy their own granite slabs that they then give to the engraver. The engraver engraves the writing, and then they pay an installer to go install it. They got all of that worked out through the cemetery. So the conversations that I'm having right now, and Ali Bhai, I haven't even brought him up to speed, I was hoping to talk to him today, is to see if we can buy our own granite and maybe get it engraved, and then maybe get our own tombstones done. So this is kind of work in progress. It's literally this week and last week that we've been talking about it. But again, it's thanks to, and this is the point I wanted to make, it's thanks to somebody in the community like Anjum Auntie who brings it to our attention. She actually went and visited some of these places, got quotes, asked them for all the options, realized how overwhelming it is, and then brought it to our attention. So now, we're going to work on it, but again, this is yet now another project that we need to work on. When I made a phone call to Orlando, so just today I talked to the guy that is in charge of all the tombstones in Orlando, and he was telling me the same thing, that when we did the numbers, it turned out that there's a 4 to 5x cost factor. So the raw cost might be $1,000, but they're charging $5,000 to $6,000 for the tombstones, right? So we want to save the community money, but at the same time, we want to understand how it works, what all the processes are. They went ahead and he told me they bought 50 slabs of granite from China, and they had it shipped, and it's now sitting with them. And now they have all the granite. So they made a one-time cost, purchased the granite, and now they do their own tombstones. Now, money is a sensitive issue, right, for IABA because of the building, right? So all these things cost money, and we need to figure out what is the most cost-effective solution for us, yet at the same time something that we can afford and we can fund.
Modern discourages basically for anybody to go out and buy. So they will come up with the idea that the installer has to have like these certificates, insurance and all that. And then we take the responsibility to do it with us. But if you do it from outside, if it breaks, if something happens, it's nothing is ours. So when you go there, I've been there, they try to discourage you. They tell you that this, if you can fulfill all these, yes, then you can do it.
Because they want to have their own people.
Yeah.
Money,
So one of the ways to work with Cook Water, and this again we have found after years of experience, is that we sort of understand how they work, we understand their system, and then we try and work with them to see if they can accommodate us. The problem we made with Cook Water, and this is my opinion, is that we went in and just looked at one price, the cost of land. We didn't look at everything else, the cost of a burial, the cost of a tombstone, the cost of a service. All these things now we are realizing are all additional costs. So we're kind of locked into Cook Warden. So I called Ryan, I contacted Cook Warden last week, and I told him, Ryan, I don't like the way you guys do your tombstone policy. Can you work with us? And he says, Abbas, you have 100 lots. You know what? We'll work with you. So they're willing to work with us. So Auntie went, took the same quote that she got from some of the other places and tried to see if they'll match it, right? So there are ways that we're working with them, but Cook Warden, is and they're a corporate company, right? So they're driven by making money. So we have to understand that, and we have to try and work with them to see how they can accommodate us. So that's ongoing, and we're still working on that. Okay, this is the last slide? Yeah, okay, 2 more slides to go. So can you click on that link? Okay, I want to show you this a website because is our internet good? There we go, it came up, Orlando Memorial, yeah. So this is a beautiful website. So this is Orlando Cemetery, the Shia Ithnashri Cemetery in Orlando. And if you zoom in, one more, okay, now stop right there. Okay, notice how every grave now has a number, and you can see who's buried over there. Abdul Hussein, he was one of the founding fathers of Orlando. Orlando Center paid this company, RIP, rest in peace, to make this website. It was very, very affordable. So I'm working with them to see if they can do the similar thing for our cemetery in Cook Walden. That way you go over, it tells you, and if you zoom out a little bit, Akhi, just a little bit, one more, and then go that way. See, those are all the empty lots. Every lot is numbered, and you can see who owns it. And then if you go and you click on one of the graves where somebody's buried, it'll tell you right here. Yeah, just click on it, Akhi. Is it clickable? Yeah, maybe. Is it playing with you? It won't let you select. No? Okay. When you click on it, you can go to this website in your own time. When you click on it, it comes up here on the left with date of birth, date of death, and everything like that. So this is a website that, it's a company in Australia that makes this, and they charge a monthly fee. They charge one-time fee to set it up, and then a monthly fee. It's very affordable. So I'm hoping to set up an account with them so that we can have this as well. There you go. Okay, yeah. So see, for example, here, it tells you, okay, we don't have a date of birth here, but it tells you the day they passed away, and then the date that they were internment, the date that they were buried. Remember, somebody could pass away on a date and then buried on a different date. So all this bio information is captured on the website. So this is one website that I'm working on, inshallah, and hoping to give an update on that. Can you go to the slide again and then click on the next slide? Yeah, so this is IABA's current funeral website. I need to update this. I just haven't had time to do it. But inshallah, all the resources that we've talked about will be available from here. And then go to the slide again, and then there's a third website I wanted to bring up. Yeah, this one here. So this is a very interesting organization, Muslim Funeral Services. Go to their process and go down a little bit. Okay, step by step, they have highlighted all the processes that are involved in a funeral. Picking up the body, the paperwork, applying for a death certificate, what to do if somebody dies at home, mortuary, and all that stuff. So this organization, Muslim Funeral Service, they are an umbrella organization. They're based in California, and they have started their own insurance program for funeral. And if you go to policies, go down a little bit. Yeah, right here. Yeah, go down a little bit. Yeah, maximum funeral cost. They are also estimated $10,000 is the average cost for funeral, and they've come up with a way whereby they can save their members money. So I'm working with them. Right now they're full, they're not accepting anybody else. I'm hoping we can learn from their model as well. What I like about them is if you go to the forms, go down a little bit. Okay, all the forms are here. Authorization form, death certificate worksheet, cemetery information, everything. I really like the way they've done their website. So I'm hoping to borrow from their content and kind of adopt it to our website as well. So these are just updates about the website, and then 5 more minutes we have left. I'll open up the Q&A. Last slide is what's coming future. Yeah, future workshops. Okay, so future workshops. Today we just discovered 3 more topics we needed to talk about, right? Financial planning is one, wills and stuff like that. There were the other 2. We talked about repatriation, transporting body overseas, and then we talked about autopsy. That one also we need to have a discussion on. So there are things like that. And then yesterday People were really, I got good feedback that the demonstration that everybody did for the coffin cutting, for the coffin demo was really beneficial. So we were thinking maybe we'll have, imagine if you had a workshop where you cut your own coffin right here. You cut your coffin and then you get to keep it. It's yours. So inshallah we'll try and do that here as well. We also wanted to do, that way you can have it all here. Now, we also wanted to do a demo on the ghusl and the coffin, so I'm looking for a mannequin where we can bring, and then we can do it here as well. Islamic wills and funeral planning, we want to do a workshop on that. And then some of the youth have been asking very interesting questions, right, about organ donation. This is a sensitive subject, so I need to do a little bit more research. My wife is also trying to get some information on that. And then the green burial process. You know, our Islamic funeral process is, mashallah, so aligned with the green process. So I'm trying to take some information of how they promote green burial, and that we can map it to that. So that's another potential workshop in the future. So stay tuned. There's a lot of stuff happening. We want to keep the community engaged. At the same time, some of this stuff takes a lot of time. So given that we're trying our best to take all these things into consideration, so we'll be coming, inshallah, in the future with more updates.
Who's in the funeral committee? Three of you in here?
Who is in the funeral committee? So I'm the chairman, and then we have a bunch of volunteers. So my wife is on the ladies' side in charge of the ladies' funeral, and then on the men's side, I am in charge for the funeral. Aliba is my right-hand man, my go-to guy, everything. I rely on him. He's my, the person that I reach out to whenever. Let me explain. I didn't mention this yesterday, but whenever we receive a body, a male body especially, we have to go see the body. So it'll either be Aliba or myself to go see the body first time. It's things like that right now it's just myself and Brother Ali Hamani. We have a group of volunteers. We have, I don't know, Muhammad Rizvi, you're on the WhatsApp group, right? We have about 12, 15 people. These are all volunteers if we need them. Alhamdulillah, every time we've had a need, people have stepped up and made themselves available. The key thing about the group is that it's sensitive, right? So we don't really want to involve everybody in that group. So we don't want to grow it too much, unfortunately, right now. But we have enough representation from all the different cultures right now in there.
Do you have a backup? I mean, if you know the available.
Yes, Brother Al-Yamani is my backup, yeah. So we'll be putting all that information on the website. I'm trying to get us a phone number, so it's a one-call number. You call that number, it'll either go to him or myself. And if it's on the ladies' side, it'll go to my wife. I'm trying to set that up. We'd set that up before for IABA, where you call one number and then it can go to different areas, so you don't have to know who to call. So inshallah, that'll be coming as well. Yeah. Any questions on the ladies' side? No? That's it? Yes?
I have a question, the size of the graves.
Yeah.
Who determined that? The cemetery itself? Seems like big. I mean, it's a good size. I mean, can they make it smaller and have more space? Is that possible?
So Cook Walden, it's their property. They can do whatever they want. Yeah. When we do ours, I think, as Adeline told me, I think it's a 4x6. She has dimensions. And we can adjust it based on what we need, yeah. I think there's some legal guidelines, like you don't want to make it too cramped. But then, yeah, we can adjust it based on our needs.
I want to know about the other one in Georgetown, if you would.
Yeah, I'm working on that. Yeah, the one on Georgetown, we have to go visit with them, get information, and then I'll have a packet ready of what they offer. Yes, we have a question in the back. Sorry, 1 second, yes.
I was going to ask, is there a list that we can sign up on if we want to help with the next burial? Or?
Yeah, so that has come up before. There's so many people that are interested. So right now, I'm trying to keep it at a cap so we don't have too many people. But I'm hoping that we can, what was the plan?
Yeah, we're hoping to make it a little bit more organized and break it up into different areas. We really want the community to be involved. So I think one of the first tasks is the education piece. So that's why we're trying to organize our workshops. That way we're teaching people the process, getting people really familiar. And then we want to get it organized whereby we have a group that does certain things, in the whole process. So inshallah, in the next few months, we'll have more WhatsApp groups that are more specific to the need. But yeah, it's work in progress for sure. Yeah.
So yes, Aliba.
We can, just like an idea that we can have a list of like who wants to learn and participate in the next.
Yes.
We
Right.
can have a list, people can sign in.
Right.
And we can pick one in the next.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
something
That's a good idea. Just have someone observe the process. Yeah.
So, so what I've come up with, and I discussed it yesterday on the way back home, Mateen said, I want to be in the next one, right? So Mateen is already volunteering. So Kashif already has done one with us, and I'm trying to get youth more involved in it. So it's a double-edged sword. What I mean by that is we can only have 5 or 6 people in there to start off with, right? Because it's limited. So we've got to make sure that there's at least a couple that know what they're doing, then maybe a couple from the family. So if we have spots open, we will create a list whereby people can come and observe at least and watch how we're doing. The thing is that you need to understand the process. So that's why we're doing this. So people have watched and have understood the process. Now they can come and observe. Next, they might come and hold the water. Next, they might come and do the ghusl. Then they will be able to lead the ghusl, right? So it's step-by-step process.
It would
But
be nice to have like flow chart of the process.
yes, yeah. So speaking of, there is a beautiful leaflet here that Brother Ali has prepared, and there's a book here about the actual process as well. If you're interested, we're giving these out to anybody that is interested in picking them up. And so so now we've done the demo. We've talked about it. We'll do a demo. People can come and observe, and inshallah, awareness is the first part. Participation is the second part. And so we have to get comfortable around this thing, and we have to sort of be a little bit more open, and inviting. So inshallah, we'll try and do that.
If you can, put some priorities on the will.
Will, yes.
Islamic will,
I agree, yes.
because, you don't know what happens tomorrow.
Yes,
Some stuff you can learn it later and find out about them,
yes.
but will, you sleep tonight, you may not wake up.
No, you're right. Yeah, you're right. So that workshop that we had with Brother Ali Tawfiq, I wasn't here for that. That was supposed to be for that, but the feedback I got was there was a lot of information packed into that, and some people left very confused, you see. So I'm trying to work on that. I'm trying to get...
He was
Yeah.
very informative, I thought.
Yeah, but I think some of the feedback we got was there was a lot packed in there, and so some people were expecting a simple introduction and then a focus on wills. There was a lot of information packed in there, and you found it beneficial. That's good. So the next one we'll do will be just about wills.
Short sessions, long sessions, people get tired.
Yes.
or Leaving, it's too much.
It's boring. Yes.
Short,
Yes.
brief, to the point
Yes.
sessions.
Yes.
Maybe more sessions
Yeah.
than one session cover everything.
Yes.
And I think that's a good cue to
Yeah.
wrap this up as well.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
that, and we do have medical power of attorney paperwork with us. So if you're interested, we'll definitely share those. And then if you want to fill it out, Auntie Malik Taj is available. I can help go through the document as well, and you can get that done. We wanted to end with a dua that I found from, this is a dua Imam Sajjad taught us, and it's in Makarim al-Akhlaq. And I think we're talking about a lot of different options, a lot of different concepts, and it can get confusing, it can get overwhelming. So inshallah, we use his words to ask God. We say, "Oh Allah, spare me the concerns which distract me, and we employ me in those deeds about which you will ask me tomorrow, and let me pass my days in that work for which you have created me."
Ameen.
Ameen.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أحسنت.